Build It Motorsport. Now today we're going to start a three-part series about things that people don't always understand when it comes to racing, just in general, but particularly drag racing or any kind of just A to B racing, straight line racing. So the three parts are going to be, first, power to weight ratio. We're going to talk about that today. Then the next video is going to be about gearing, and I'll go into more depth on that one about all the things that actually are gearing. One of the things that people don't understand that is also gearing is tire size, makes a big difference. We'll cover all that in the second video. In the last video, what'll kind of tie it all together is DA. That DA is density altitude, and that's gonna be your air quality. So it's gonna play a big factor in comparing your own times with your previous times, and it's gonna be very important when comparing other people and their times from different climates and stuff, because it's not always a direct comparison with those things. But we'll get into that in the last video. So we'll get right into it. Part one is power to weight ratio. So the first thing you should know about power to weight ratio is exactly what it is the power compared with the weight of any given vehicle. So the more power that you have, then the faster that your vehicle is going to go, the faster it's going to accelerate, generally speaking. The heavier it is, the more resistance it's going to have to accelerating with any given power level. So the more power you have and the less weight, the better. Generally speaking, that's the better. So the less power and the more weight, then it's going to be slower to accelerate. As a hypothetical, let's say somebody has a very heavy vehicle like myself, and they were going to go race somebody who has a very light vehicle. Now, if the two vehicles have the same power, then the lighter one's going to win that race, depending on the traction, but it's going to essentially effectively win that race. The lighter one would win. Now, if you have more power than somebody, but your vehicle also weighs more, and then theirs is lighter and it weighs less, but it has less power, that you don't know who's going to win. That's what's fun in racing. If you already knew who was going to win, then it might not even be worth watching. No one would be interested in it. So that's some guesswork in that. So let's say someone has exactly a third of the weight and a third of the power, then your two vehicles should effectively be the same accelerating. There's a lot of other factors that go into that, but that's just the basics. So I'm going to provide an example of something that happened to me this past weekend with somebody at a cruise night. We ended up racing, and we were all having a good time. We were having fun, and I pulled up next to somebody while we were cruising, and had an open road, and he wanted to race me. So I was like, hey, I'll have fun, I'll race this guy. But before we get into that example, which I think is a really good example of how people can be, I want to, first of all, as a disclaimer, there are a lot of good people who are in the racing community, absolutely awesome people with awesome rides, all shapes and sizes, and there are also people who don't always understand certain things, and there are people who are very, very rude and just kind of a little bit full of themselves sometimes, and they don't always know as much, so we kind of have to deal with those people. But there's a lot of good people out there too. So I'll get into my example of power to weight ratio and why it matters when you're going into a race with somebody. So here's my vehicle. I'll put it up on the screen. That's a 2008 Dodge Ram Mega Cab, 4-wheel drive, and it has a Hemi. I have a toolbox in the back and other things that make it quite a bit heavier than it even was from the factory, and I have some 33-inch tires. Now that you guys who maybe aren't following the channel, I would encourage you to subscribe. Please subscribe. But that's my vehicle for those of you who haven't seen it in other videos. So I went and I raced a gentleman who had a substantially lighter vehicle. It was a I don't know if it was what year exactly it was, but it was a 4th gen Ram, had a Hemi in it. It was 2-wheel drive and single cab. That's going to be a lot lighter than this truck. So when I raced him, we were going slightly uphill, which also doesn't help whenever you're at a disadvantage on weight. If you're going to race uphill, you're at an extra disadvantage on weight. So I went and raced this kid, and we took off, and I kept up with him pretty good. I also think he had an 8-speed, by the way it was shifting, but I kept up with him pretty good. And then as we started to get to where the end of our run was, we were running out of room, and he started to walk away on me a little bit in the higher speeds. He got about a truck length away from me, and then we let out. He had a small gap on me. It was his truck length was the gap. Well, as we're stopping, he's waving goodbye, and I'm thinking, how classy. This guy thinks that was something special. I wouldn't have been so proud of that, considering how heavy my truck is. That's more good on me, being the heavier vehicle, that I was even able to be remotely close. But he won, and it's good deal. Well, so I decided, hey, if I can go downhill, maybe I can beat him. I think I can beat him if we go the other direction. So he pulls into a gas station, and I wanted to find out what kind of mods he had, and I was going to let the whole waving thing go, because some people are just like that. Well, as I pull in, he rolls down his window, and I roll on mine, and I'm being friendly. And I said, hey, how was that? And I'm quoting here, he said, I gapped your ass. I gapped your ass. So I kind of laughed at him and shook it off. But he was a young kid, so I guess I shouldn't really expected any different out of somebody like that. That's kind of being a punk, which you'll deal with in any situation. But I asked him, I said, well, how much does your truck weigh? He said, oh, I don't know. And he's dodging the question. I think he knew exactly what I was getting at. And he said, I said, I got a tune, and he said, I got a tune and a built transmission, buddy. And so, as some of you may or may not know, the Battle Wagon, this truck that I just put on the screen, it's cammed, it's full bolt-on, straight pipe all the way back. I mean, there's not really much I can do besides maybe an ethanol tune or boost or nitrous. And by the way, guys, I have been working on getting HP tuners because Diablo Sport isn't cutting it for me anymore. I'm having trouble data logging the wideband, and they're just not helping me on the situation. So we're going to HP tuners, and I'm going to work on getting an ethanol tune once I get that all set up and squared away. But back to the story. So he had told me that he had a tune and a built transmission. So I said, hey, okay, what's the stall on your torque converter? He said, oh, I don't know. So at this point I'm going, okay, it's probably not a built transmission. It might be rebuilt, I don't know. But it probably just has a canned Diablo tune, which is good for him. He's getting started. He's got a great platform. It's super light. That's going to be a lot quicker than a lot of people just because of the weight reduction that he has from being a single cab 2-wheel drive truck. But it goes on, and I'm just trying to be cool with the guy, and he starts getting on my nerves because he's just being a punk. And so I just said, you know what, I didn't try racing him again. I said, have a good night, be safe, and I went on about my business. But that's just an example, guys, of something that can happen to you with certain people who don't understand power to weight ratio. So if you're going to go and race somebody, keep that in mind. You may have a lot more power than them, but they might still beat you because of the fact that their vehicle might weigh less. Also, if your vehicle is lighter than someone else's and they just barely beat you, then maybe you shouldn't be so proud of it. And in general, just show some more respect for people. But power to weight ratio will definitely affect you when you're going down to the track. And I want to encourage you guys to be humble no matter what you have. I beat people who have lighter vehicles, and I don't rub it in their face that I beat them with a way heavier truck. So, it's a point of pride for me. Yeah, of course, I'm like, hey, I beat them, and I'm way heavier. That's awesome. Like, that's really something. but I'm not going to sit there and rub it in their face. So I would encourage you guys to be good sports out there, and then also keep that in mind when you're going into racing. You can be proud of what you have and be proud of what you have, but don't be so cocky and don't underestimate yourself, because you might beat somebody who's heavier than you with less power in your vehicle. So it's just something to keep in mind. But moving on to gearing, in the next video we're going to cover that and how that affects you. That can play a big part in how fast it is, and you can keep your vehicle completely stock and only change the gearing and the tire size, and it can make it a lot faster and beat people who have more power than you that aren't geared right. So that's going to be a little bit more of an in-depth video, but we'll get into that. Probably going to put that video out here in the next couple days. But y'all stay tuned, and please like, share, and subscribe, and keep on building it. See you on the next one.